Whitt. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a senior product manager at Niantic, focused on our developer platform and our creator tools.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Curtis. I'm a UX engineer at Niantic. I've also been a dev support engineer for the past 3 years and can see a lot of familiar faces in the audience. So hello, everybody.
Cool. All right. I guess I will go ahead and just get us started here as we go into Niantic Studio. So I see we have a lot of new folks here. So before we get started with Studio and introducing Studio, I'm going to introduce Eighthwall in general to those that are new. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we got to Studio. And then Ian's actually going to take us through using the new tooling. Okay. So for those that are new to Eighthwall, Eighthwall is the leading platform for creating WebXR. So at Eighthwall, we are big fans of the web. We believe the web is the ultimate distribution platform because it's universal, it's flexible, it's immediate, it's on everybody's phone, and there's no app required for accessing your content. And since 2018, Eighthwall has been bringing some incredible AR power to the browser. And I'm going to talk about that for a second. Let me switch the slide here. So with Eighthwall in our engine, you can tap into advanced AR features. So features like world tracking, VPS, sky effects, image targets, human AR. And all of this is made available on the browser. Using the engine, you can also build XR experiences that work across platform. That includes headsets like HoloLens, MetaQuest, and more recently, Apple Vision Pro. So across mobile devices, desktop, headsets, basically any device with a browser, users can access your content. So you build once and your content can truly be universally deployed. Let's go to the next slide. All right. And Eighthwall also has offered a suite of web-based developer tools. So tools like our code editor, built-in hosting, our debug console. You can see here our AR simulator. These tools are going to let you build, collaborate, and distribute seamlessly on the web. And using these tools, Eighthwall developers have built hundreds of thousands of web apps that have been experienced hundreds of millions of times. That's a lot. And during this journey over the last few years, we've been working really closely with this awesome community of creators, with you all in this audience, and listening to your feedback. Switch slide here. And I'm going to talk about that for a second. The key feedback we've been hearing is around the challenges you face in your creativity. So we've heard from creators, maybe coming from a gaming background, that find translating 3D game projects into 2D web frameworks is really difficult. Or we've heard issues from creators, maybe coming from a design background, that onboarding into a wall of code with our code editor is a pretty non-intuitive way to work with WebXR. We've also heard from creators that are using 3D or visual XR tools, but maybe finding those tools are quite limited to building basic face effects and world effects. And they want to be able to build more interaction and complexity into the experience. So we hear your issues, and at Eighthwall, we are committed to solving them. We believe the web is the best platform for the next generation of immersive content, but we also hear you that the web needs better tooling to get there. And that leads us to what we're going to be sharing with you today is Niantic Studio. So 2 weeks ago at AWE, we launched a new tool, Niantic Studio, and it's now available in public beta at eighthwall.com. And we also made it free. So we have a new free tier for individuals and personal projects. So Studio really represents a major shift for the Eighthwall platform. So let's go into Studio. And first, we're going to start with the mission. I'm going to read this. But our mission is to empower you to build the next generation of immersive XR experiences right in the browser. And by creators, we mean not just web developers, but a broader ecosystem of designers, programmers, artists, hobbyists. And what can you do with Studio? Well, designers and programmers may be coming from 3D web or a gaming background, maybe that have XR technology experience or not, maybe that have a coding background or not. Studio lets you build immersive content across platform flexibly, and it supports you in a pretty broad spectrum of different 3D or spatial use cases and different modes. Our approach to Studio was to take our universal web-based platform and combine that with an all-new visual editor and game engine. So we're familiar with the Eighth Wall Universal Web Platform, but I'm going to introduce us to the two new parts. All right, first, our visual editor. So you can now with Eighth Wall build in 3D with instant feedback. So no longer are you greeted with a wall of code. This has been a major ask from the community, and it's a major shift for Eighth Wall. So you can do things like drag and drop in assets. You can visually configure your objects. You can orbit about the scene. Of course, if you do want to work in code, Studio does support you with a code editor, and you can see your code changes appear quickly within the 3D space or the 3D viewport. On top of this, what you're seeing here is a pretty cool feature for Studio. Studio supports live simultaneous editing and playback. So Ian's going to demonstrate this further, but it's a really unique aspect to Studio, and it's designed to really accelerate your creator flow. Next, Studio brings an all-new game engine to the table. So Eighth Wall has been known for its robust XR engine for features like image targets and face effects and world tracking. But increasingly with Eighth Wall, we've been seeing developers using external game systems and libraries to create more interactive experiences. So maybe they're bringing in systems for managing physics, for managing player device inputs, or for managing animations and audio. And we've seen that when it comes to the web, there are few platforms that really bring XR and gaming interaction systems together. So that was our approach to the evolution of the Eighth Wall engine, is really bringing in these gaming and these interaction systems into the Eighth Wall system for you. And that's going to let you build more interactive or responsive or personalized experiences that create more entertainment and value and fun for the end user. To the next slide here. Okay, I talked about some of these features like our game engine, our XR features and capabilities, and the visual editor, but there's a lot more detail too that is baked into the tool that Ian is going to show. I also want to stress this is our very first iteration. Studio is in public beta. So we're working on a lot more features to enable you to better 3D design, build in more gaming functionality, and access more of our XR capabilities. And so we want your feedback. We definitely want to hear about what features you need, what is working with Studio and what's not, and definitely what you want to be able to build. So here's my PSA to join us at our forum. So that's forum.eighthwall.com. And attend the upcoming workshops that Pablo mentioned. We're going to be going through more key features in detail and showing you how to work with more use cases and more of the capabilities like around XR features for the tooling. So our community teams are here to support you, talk to us, and we want to build the next generation of immersive content together. Okay, with that, I am going to pass it over to Ian, who's actually now going to go into the good part and actually demonstrate Studio.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that intro, Amanda. Hello, everybody again. Ian Curtis. I've worked as a dev support engineer for the last three and a half years at Eighth Wall. And certainly, as Amanda said, like one of the most common questions we got was having a 3D editor, a 3D inspector when building these AR experiences. And so I'm, so happy to see this question come to life and with Niantic Studio. If we go to the next slide, please. Awesome. So I have two short videos I'm going to show, and then we'll go into a sample project as well. So here is just showcasing Niantic Studio. kind of the UI overview, and then a simulator here, and kind of showcasing that live sync that Amanda was noting. So here is one of our tap to place sample projects, and you're able to simulate kind of a walkthrough in AR and then interact with that simulation, and then see those changes live in your editor, which is a really fun, cool, and kind of intuitive way to work with AR. And then along with world effects, we also have face effects too. We can go to the next slide. Awesome, thank you. So here you can change the camera view from world effects to face effects. And then in the simulator, we have simulations of 1, 2, or 3 different people, and then you can kind of quickly iterate, add 3D objects, move them around, unlike before where you have to use code and then kind of reload your editor and view that live. So for world effects and face, this is extremely, extremely helpful. And then next, I'm going to actually dive into one of the sample projects we have. So I will share my screen. Awesome. Cool. All right. So you're also welcome to look at our sample projects of Studio that we currently have at our project library at atol.com/projects. Kind of these first 2 rows here, or any project that has Studio in front of it. We have some sample projects. This is like Bog Battle, Botanical Blaster, Bunny Blitz, and then some kind of more basic world effects and the face effects project that I showcased there in the slideshow. But the one I'm going to talk about today is our physics playground. This is a project that I was able to work with and on to kind of showcase some of the really amazing features that come with Niantic Studio. So if you want to follow along or kind of experiment with this later, you can simply go to the project library, and then you can clone the project and or launch to test. I've already cloned it into my workspace, and here it is in Studio. So another fun fact is that I actually studied architecture before going into kind of the AR industry. And I started with 3D and 3D design kind of as my first intro. And then I learned code and kind of helped combine those as I created AR experiences. And it's just really nice to kind of come back full circle to how I started building and designing in 3D, and then seeing that here in Niantic Studio has been really, really awesome. So to kind of give a high level overview here of the UI, on the left here is our hierarchy. So this is where, and in this specific project, we have our player, and then all our 3D models. You can find these in the hierarchy. We have our camera, and then our ambient and directional lights. Below that is our files. So this is where you can create some custom components. This project has 2 very basic custom components: our character controller and then our follow camera. So this is attached to our ball here, which allows you to move the ball around, and then the follow camera just essentially animates the camera to follow that character. And then we have all our assets here, which we'll talk about later, and we'll drag some of these in. On the top right here is our launch toolbar. So this is where you're going to be able to build, land, and publish your project, along with the simulator that was shown in those slides earlier. I'll go into this as well, but we'll click play and kind of simulate some of the projects as we build here. And then on the right here is an inspector. So any information about specific objects you're selecting, and or if you want to add any custom components, this is all going to be shown here on the right. So to start, I'm just going to simulate our project as is, and this is going to be 3D first. And so as I click that play button, it's going to compile my project, and then I'm able to interact and move with it. So the first thing I want to note is that the simulator is running here, but what's also really cool is that you can see in our editor that this ball is also moving. So for example, if I knock into these green bricks here, you're seeing those interact with the environment as I'm moving around. And so I'll kind of move this ball around to give a little tutorial and view of the project itself. We have some dynamic objects here, these pins, and these are all objects and physics sliders that you can add with built-in components in Studio. So this green box is also a dynamic object. You can think of dynamic objects as a chair or a table. So these are things in the real world that you can move. Static objects are like this blue box here, or these yellow ramps. So these are objects you can think about as a wall or the ground, objects that aren't going to move. And then we have kind of kinematic objects. So these are these moving platforms that have these baked animations in them, but you're still able to interact with them using physics. So I'll bring my ball up here to the front, and we'll start by creating a primitive within our scene here. So we'll go back to the hierarchy. We can click this plus symbol, and this will pull up a menu with primitive shapes that we want to create. So, I kind of want to start with a sphere here. I can grab the sphere. It's going to initiate at the center of my scene at 0, 0, 0. And then we can also see it in the live view here. And so as I move this sphere, it's updating. Maybe I'm going to want to scale it up to 2. As I move it, you'll also see that the position attributes are updating rotation and the scale here as well. And so with every primitive, there's going to be kind of this mesh component that comes with it, which is going to specify the geometry, other attributes for that specific type of shape, and then a standard material. The standard material has a lot of attributes: metalness, roughness, ability to add textures to it. But we're going to stay pretty simple here and maybe make a nice purple sphere. Cool. And then maybe we'll add 0 on the roughness, and maybe some 0 on the metalness as well. So now what's really cool is we can add physics to this ball. So what I can do is click the new component button here at the bottom. And what's really cool with Studio is that there's a bunch of custom components that come built into Studio. So you don't have to write these at all, or import them in any way. You can just click new component, and you have a particle emitter that you can add into your scene, and have particles. You can have a physics collider. You can add lighting, animation. These were things that you had to code in the past, but now I can easily just add a shadow component. Again, clicking this lighting and then component, and then I can check on this cast and receive shadow. So now, this shadow from this ball I just created is gonna shade onto the ground I have and my player character here as well. And if I want to be able to interact with this object, I can add a physics collider here. And if I zoom in, you can see kind of these red lines around the ball. So this is showing that physics collider on this specific shape. And I can, increase this or decrease this specific collider. Right now it's set to static. So it's going to be like a ground or a wall, something that isn't going to move. But if I change this to dynamic, what's going to happen is that ball is going to fall, and then I can interact with it and move it around. So this is just really awesome for quick prototyping and testing, and bringing in new objects. And so we can kind of do this quickly for other objects. Maybe the ball, for this specific reason I didn't like how it was rolling around, I can add a capsule instead. Again, it'll start at 0, 0, 0. I'll go through the same process here, maybe add a blue hue to it. We'll go to roughness, metalness, bring this down. And again, we'll go to the new components here. We'll add lighting, shadow, and easy as that. Again, we have this, shadow component added. Maybe I'll move my ball right underneath here. Add this physics collider. And, right now it's static, so I can bounce off of it like a wall. But if we move to dynamic again here, it's right in my scene, and I can move it around. And so this doesn't only work with primitives. For example, if I want to move this ramp here, it'll also update in my project. So I can kind of test new type of levels or collisions as I move around. And then I think what's really, really fun is the ability to update a custom component. So on the bottom right here, I have a character controller with some attributes, force, jump force, and jump control factor. And so the force here is the amount of force that's being applied to this character as I move it around. And so in the past, with Cloud Editor, you'd have to have this custom component, and then maybe if the force was too small, I'd want to increase it, kind of save my project, and then open it and run it. But now what's really cool is I can just change this straight to a higher force of 25, and then my character is going to be moving a lot faster. And maybe I want to move it to 100, which will be pretty quick here, but we can test it out. So this are just live edits that I can change. So there, it went off the edge there. So we'll restart. So what happens if I exit out the simulator? Everything kind of goes back to its original starting position, especially if you have a physics collider on it. But we can certainly rerun the scene here. Now I know that 100 is going to be a little bit too quick for the type of game I want. So we can reduce that. Just like there. We'll put it back down to 15. I like that. Cool. And then we can maybe increase the jump force, not to 150,000, maybe 1,500. There we go. But now we got a nice big jump. So yeah, the ability to add these custom components and build projects quickly is a much quicker way to build more complex scenes, especially with something like a character controller, which you really want to tweak kind of how fast it moves, how fast it rotates, how fast it turns, how quickly it slows down. I know for me, I've built character controller projects in the past, and just having to save and build and reload that every single time can be kind of cumbersome. So we've seen this in 3D. I'm going to show this in AR, but before I do that, I'm going to bring in a GLB model. So to do that, you can go into your assets here, and then you can just drag it into your scene. Again, this will showcase at 000. So this is a coin that I've brought in. I want to, maybe have this coin be the character controller instead of the ball. And so I'm going to add some things like a physics collider to this, maybe increase the size a bit, and then also a shadow component. So just like we did for the sphere and the ball, I'm going to go to my new component here, go to lighting, shadow, check these on so that my coin is interacting with the scene with shadows now. Able to receive shadow as well. I'll add a new component of physics collider here. We'll make it dynamic. What's also cool is we have these hole colliders for GLB models. So for primitives, we have, for the sphere, we have a sphere and capsule, but for a GLB model that you bring in that might have this obtuse kind of shape, you can easily add our auto shape to that component. And here you can kind of see how that physics collider wraps around this coin here. So what I'm going to do is remove the character controller on my ball here, and instead I'm going to add it to my coin. And so we have these built-in components, animation, lighting, etc., but we have custom components which I've written. So that'll be at the top here. I can click custom component, and then here I'm going to add this character controller to my coin. And then I'm also going to change my my camera follow controller. So right now it's following my player, which is my ball, but I'm going to want to change that to my coin instead. So we'll go to coin.glb, and then I can build my project. If you are adding or changing kind of custom components, a good practice is to build your project, and then we can run it. So if all has gone right, I should be able to move this coin instead as a weird character and jump up and down. So just like that, I'm able to bring in the GLB model and then kind of interact with objects and now move it around. So this is just kind of showcasing how you can quickly bring in GLB models, add colliders to them, and move around. So now we've seen this in 3D and tested it in 3D. And some of the videos that we showed earlier was showing it in AR. And so to do that, we can go to our camera here. And currently you can see it's checked on for 3D only. So what we're going to want to do is change it to world. If you're doing a face effects project, you change it to face, and you'll kind of see that mesh face with all the feature points that were shown in that slide deck earlier. So I'm going to change this to world. And then I'm going to actually turn on my AR ground and remove my other ground just for AR experiences, depending on what you're building. You know, it's really nice to kind of see those shadows on the actual ground itself rather than having a GLB model as the ground. And so this also comes with a standard shadow material that you can add easily to any plane or object you have in your scene. And so I'm going to go to my scene and remove my camera follow component because we're going to run this in AR instead. So the camera is going to kind of follow the specific simulation that we're going to be running. Cool. So built my project. And then when I run this, we should see kind of an AR simulation instead. Let me replay this real quick. There we go. Cool. So now we have this whole game kind of running in a city park, and I can interact with it. You can see it live updating on the left, and then I can also change to different simulations. So maybe I want this sidewalk world tracking experience to see how it would run there, and this is all running live in the simulator in the visual editor as well, and I'm able to test, move around, jump this coin around, and it just, the ability to build and test is so much quicker than it has been in the past, where you're having to save, build the project, change attributes, test it from your phone. All this is built into Niantic Studio now, so it's much quicker. And that is my quick overview of the sample project. So I certainly encourage you to open this project, clone it, test it out, bring in GLB models, mess around with all the physics, the custom components, particles, etc. This is only a small snippet of what Niantic features include. And also really encourage you to come to Josh's talk next week, which he'll go more into depth with face effects and kind of world effects as well. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ian and Amanda, for great presentation. And now we'll go ahead and move into our Q&A section. We left a lot of time for that particular reason because there's already so many great questions. We had two that Amanda answered in the Q&A already, but we're going to go ahead and ask them again. That way she can repeat her answer so everyone can hear them. But yeah, so the first question comes from Sergio. On the event for July 16th, the one for no code effects, do world effects involve image tracking, or is image tracking still a long way from Niantic Studio?
Yeah, so world effects is separate from image tracking. So Studio supports world effects like placing objects in the real world space, but it doesn't yet support image tracking. And we asked if it's still like a long way from Studio, and I would say it's really high on our list of what we want to be able to add into Studio. So we're working on this currently. I'd say, look in the fall for image targets. And today it would be available via code for 8th Wall Pro tier, but image targets and the image target manager is not available yet for the free tier.
Yeah, and just to note on that too, super excited for this feature. I know image targets in the past is kind of cumbersome because it's hard to kind of know the distance from that image target. And just like, I know when I've built them, I'm like adding objects and I'm having to test, bring up my phone, see how far it is from the image target. So I'm super excited about this to like, especially for image targets, to like visually quickly add animations and kind of understand, your virtual objects in comparison to the image target itself. So we are certainly working on it and very excited for this.
Awesome. Thank you both. Next question is from Alexi, and it's, is it possible to switch from visual editor to source code and vice versa? Yeah, great question. I saw it come up a couple of times. So
yeah. So Studio has a code editor. It's similar to the way that you would work with Play Canvas, Unity, Unreal. So you can access our game engine, and we have API documented in our docs, so you can work with that engine directly.
Yep, and the code editor kind of pops out. I didn't want to open the code, just keep it really high level, but yeah, if you open the sample project and click on those custom components that I wrote, you'll see that there's kind of this code editor that pops out, and you're able to kind of expand that window and make updates that way.
Yeah, Ian, we have some time if you want to quickly show everyone what that looks like and how to open it.
Yeah, cool. Let me just share my screen real quick. Cool. Yeah, so if you click on a component that you've written or some of the components that come in the sample project here, this will be the kind of pop out here. So we can go to the follow camera TypeScript file here and just quickly, this is registering this component. It's just simple. We're naming what that component is, and then I've set some kind of schema defaults here of how far I want this offset for the camera to be. We can see this in the character controller as well. So we have, like I was showing earlier, is kind of that force, jump scale factor. I'll click on this. So you can kind of see the comparison here. We have force, and these are those attributes that are shown on this custom component here. And schemas are these specific attributes. Schema attributes are kind of interchangeable there. And then kind of you can also set the defaults for these force, jump force, and then these are the attributes I was changing live in the live sync while I was moving around the character. And then this is, the code, which we won't go into right now, but yeah, that's how you can interact with it.
Great, thank you so much, Ian. All right, so next question, are we able to have user/background segmentation?
Yeah, so there's no at this time body tracking with an 8th Wall. Even unfortunately, like with the cloud editor, any of the 8th Wall just doesn't have this feature at the moment for any body tracking. But certainly I know this is a feature that a lot of customers and developers have asked for. We have had developers in the past kind of implement some kind of external kind of AI tracking of some sorts on body tracking I've seen done. So I can certainly share that with anybody who's interested.
Yeah, we're getting a follow-up saying, yes, please.
Okay, cool.
Awesome. All right, so we have a question from Yassine as well. Is it possible to use occluder material in Studio? And then along that same question is, how do you control render order right now? Is it in plans to implement render order parameters?
Yeah, I can kind of start with that. I think there's a code snippet or workaround that we will be posting on the forum to work with occluder material. So you won't see that like directly within the visual configuration for materials, but we have a way that's documented that we'll be posting. Render order, that's something that we are also working on now, but there's no kind of visual interface for working with render order.
Yeah, and just a note on that too, really quickly, is I just in the editor earlier showed how you can add a kind of a shadow material or a regular material to your objects. You know, you can see something in the future where you can just add a hider material. So again, you're not gonna have to do this via code. You know, this is something we're planning to share soon, but in the future it'll be a lot easier where you can just, you know, select hider material on the standard material mesh, and then you can, you know, make cool portals and image targets and all that stuff, because I know hider materials are pretty fun to use in AR. So certainly something we'll add soon.
Awesome. And then Ian, this next question is more in particular to your experience that you were showcasing. Can the ball move using the mobile gyroscope?
It currently can't, but certainly something you could implement. I'm actually going to share my screen again real quickly. And this is something I didn't show earlier, but we have our input manager here, which is a really cool feature of Studio as well. And so I've kind of set these functions of what I want my player to do. So if it's like moving forward or jump, left, right, so these are kind of just simple character controller attributes. And then kind of with my input manager, I can select on certain devices like what button does what. And so like for a joystick, you know, down is going to move the character back. You know, WASD on a keyboard, so S would move that character back, or you can do the down arrow. So this is just a really cool way to easily kind of connect you know, different ways of this, using this project with different type of controllers or different type of devices, and just an easier way to kind of organize all this. So at its current state, it doesn't use the gyro to move the ball, but certainly a really cool idea, and I think it could certainly be done. So
Awesome. Thanks for that, Ian. Next question comes from Jared. Where is the code stored? Is this all in the cloud? Is there an option for working with things offline? How would a group of people work on a project together? So more than one question, but I think it can be answered together.
But yes,
yeah,
the code is stored in the cloud. And so you can work with a team. Basically, you set up your own instance of your code repo when you get started with the project, right? So you have your own version, and then when you go to land your changes, you can go through kind of a merge process. So yeah, you can't work offline with Studio yet. That's something that we're thinking about. But your version of your project is your own until you merge and actually land those changes into the main project.
yes, and I'll show this visually here in the editor. So yeah, as Amanda was saying, so if I'm clicking build, that's just locally for me. Like these are my changes that I want to test and simulate. So if I click land here, that'll land it within my workspace so that other people I'm working with. So this land button will change to sync if there are any like active changes that you haven't sunk to your project. And so this is what you would use to work with others. And then publishing is the same as it was on the cloud editor. So right now I just have one land, but if I landed, there'd be kind of a list of lands here, and I can set which one I want for public staging, or the kind of the latest land. And then also on the inspector here, we have our project history. And so you can, you know, click project history. This is, I just cloned the project this morning, so I just have one latest land here, but You could see this being much larger, of showcasing all kind of the lands and things that your team has done. So.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. Getting a lot of questions here. So we have 16 to go. So if we don't get through all of these questions, please remember that you can ask in the forum, and our team will be looking at that and answering there as well. But I will try to get through these as quickly as possible. Next question is from Alex. Can we use the studio inside an Oculus Quest like Shapes XR instead of only working as web-based? So Stephen came in here as another way to ask that question. Is there an immersive option for the editor or the studio?
That's a great question. I'm not sure if we've tested using Studio within a headset. We've been thinking about, ways to enable offline mode, and we're thinking about, how you enable, different platforms, maybe with an app experience for Studio. But currently, Studio is only web-based. And haven't tried that yet. I don't know, Ian, if you have inside an actual headset.
Yeah, I have not yet. I might do that later today, but I have tried. I mean, since Studio is web-based, what's cool is you can open it up on a lot of different devices. So I've opened it up on my phone. Again, it's optimized for desktop, so the UI is a bit small. But anything that you can open it up on a browser. I've simulated on my phone and added primitives. So I think there is for sure something to look at how this can easily be interacted with and built on from different type of devices. Because certainly, there's a lot of pros to building within the Quest or headset. It's a lot easier, especially if you're sculpting or you're building stuff. It's just a lot more intuitive for some certain use cases rather than on the desktop or from another device. So.
Yeah, I think you would be able to, in theory, open up Studio in Oculus on the web, but it would be desktop or flat screen and not fully immersive like you have with Shapes XR. But that's a request that we've been hearing about. You're building a VR experience or 3D experience. You want to be able to work in 3D as well. So definitely something.
Oh yeah, and it'd be cool too if you're at a VPS spot and you're physically there wanting to. I'm just thinking about ideas now, but it'd be awesome to build things while you're at location or with a headset. And anyways, yeah, a lot of cool ideas there.
Awesome, great question, Alex. Thank you. Next up, we have a question regarding the use of it in more AR space. So from Ricky, I'm aware that image targets aren't available with the Studio Creator. What about placing objects with world tracking? As a lot of the demos I've seen are just mini games placed in AR space rather than leaning more into the AR interactivity.
Yeah, we do have a set of projects for showcasing world tracking and world AR interactions, as well as face effects. So you'll see in our sample projects list for Studio, there's a world tracking project and there's a face effects project. In the world tracking project, you can see placement and maybe moving around the object within the world scene. I think if you want to create more complex interactions, you would need to go into code or kind of creating a custom behavior. But I would say check out the world effects project that we have.
Yeah, and also a quick reminder that next week we have Josh who will be going through that world effects and face effects sample projects for you all. You can RSVP at nianticevents.8thwall.com. I also dropped the link in the chat for everyone. All right, I'm going to skip through some of these questions to try and find some ones that I think are common. For example, Kyle's asking, do other functions like shared AR lobby, enrolled AR, player data module, React with experience swapping work with Studio? Can Studio projects be integrated with current projects?
Yeah, so some of the modules that you're seeing have been formatted for A-frame or for 3JS specifically. And so we would need to update the shared AR module or the in-world module for working with Studio. Of course, it's possible to work with in-world directly, but we are working on kind of migrating some of the modules that work with the existing code editor in A-Frame to work with our new Studio project format. So hold for that. As far as the NVIDIA Omniverse, not sure. I think we would need to take a look and see, projects with eighth wall that have used that before, or take a look at that code specifically.
Awesome. And then there's two questions regarding essentially VPS. Is that coming to Studio?
It is. I think real world AR is a big feature that we brought into the eighth wall platform last year. It's a major capability that we are definitely working on right now, bringing into Studio. I think we're starting with the basics, world effects and face effects, but certainly enabling real world AR, enabling our VPS points of interest to be brought into the experience is definitely high on our roadmap.
Yeah, and just to note that, I mean, I know kind of the importance of visually being able to see the mesh for VPS is just super important. I know we had kind of the ability for A-Frame specifically is to turn on kind of that inspector so you can kind of see that and then move objects around a bit. But yeah, in Studio, it's going to be much easier to kind of play animations live, drop physics objects, change attributes of custom components, all while visually seeing it. It's going to be a lot easier, and hopefully the ability to build, much cooler and immersive VPS experiences. So I know I'm certainly excited for it. So it'll come soon.
Awesome. We have a question from Jao in London. Is there a way we can add things like our own splash screens and 2D HTML UI?
Yeah. So using our UI component in Studio, you can add 2D elements. Also directly in code, you can work with HTML UI. So absolutely.
Cool, thank you. And we have a question for you, Ian. What are the specs of your computer? Because the Studio is running really seamlessly for you.
Right now I have an M2 MacBook Pro, so it is running really nicely. But things to keep in mind: have your computer charged and plugged in. I've noticed that if I've low battery, of course, Mac and any web-based stuff is going to not run as smoothly. But that's a computer I have, and I like it a lot. So
awesome, cool, thank you. We have a question from Steve regarding the physics component. It seems like the physics component make the shape sort of fall and settle. What does it do to a custom anthropomorphic character model?
I may need to get a little bit more detail on what you're trying to accomplish. Yeah.
So, yeah, to that note, so I guess I noted this a little bit on kind of that coin GLB model that I brought in. So I mean, if you bring in a character model, maybe in like a T pose or something, and you add a physics collider to it, it's gonna kind of wrap it like a saran wrap or something. This is what like a hole collider is. So the coin was nice because it's kind of a round object, so it'll wrap that collider around it. But if you brought in a character, you can imagine, it's saran wrap around it as a collider. So these physics colliders, if you have an animated character that's walking or something, note that these colliders aren't going to update as that character moves. It's going to, whatever that kind of initial pose is, it's going to create that collider around that. So for a character controller, what I usually would do if I have an animated character is you have like a capsule collider, and that kind of helps encapsulate all the movements of a character. Especially if you have a character that's like walking or running and jumping, you can kind of use a capsule to kind of help with how it interacts with physics around in the real world. So that's what I would suggest.
Great. Thank you so much. Let's see, where else? Any plans for any more tutorials? I know I shared in the chat Ian's getting started video, but what are the hopes of more tutorials coming soon?
Yeah, I mean, certainly more tutorials, the better. I know we had a bunch on Cloud Editor and especially of any common questions we would get from developers is when we would start creating these tutorials. And certainly we're currently collecting a lot of feedback and questions from devs that are using Studio. And kind of the steps we'll take from there is, which of these questions are most popular, and we'll create a tutorial from that. But certainly, we have the kind of the basic overview tutorial. We'll, certainly look into doing kind of a face effects tutorial. And then as these new features come out, as VPS and image targets, tutorials will certainly be included with that as well.
Right. We have a question from Diego. How do you handle permissions of sensors like camera, gyroscope, location, etc.?
I can go ahead and take that.
Okay, yeah.
Just like with working with the AR engine, when you enable XR for your experience, will it go through the permissions flow on behalf of the user. I think if you need direct access to the phone's gyroscope or some other system, I think you'd have to kind of set that up. But for using XR capabilities, that's baked into the XR camera functionality and the XR camera component.
Awesome. And then we have a question from Larry here. It appears Studio is built on top of Three.js. Is that correct? And will existing Three.js code work if modified to work with Studio objects similar to A-frame components?
Yeah, the simple answer is yes there.
Awesome.
I would say check out our documentation. So we describe this and how you can use Three.js in the docs.
Yeah, and we're planning to make it easier as well to kind of talk with Three.js and use that within Studio.
All right, awesome. One more question. Does Niantic Studio have sequencer like Unity, UA5, or E for visual FX, storytelling, or logic time events?
So, you may see in, Adobe Aero, Unity, a visual interface for maybe creating a behavior tree. That's not something that we have yet, but the concept of game state, the concept of game events, and, like a, time or tick is baked into the Studio core engine. So those are things that you can tap into conceptually, but we just don't have the visual editor for tying these kind of game state and triggers together.
Great, thank you so much. All right, y'all, we are just about at time, so I want to take these last 2 minutes to first of all say thank you all so much for your interest in learning more about the Niantic Studio.